I was sitting in a hospital gown, holding discharge papers for a surgery scheduled in 4 days, when my mother looked me in the eye and said, "We're not doing this anymore." My 6-month-old twins were crying in the background. My hands were shaking, and I realized in that moment that I had no one. But I didn't know my grandfather was listening from the next room, and I didn't know what he was about to do at dinner 3 nights later. My name is Claire, and I'm 31 years old. I have twin daughters, Emma and Sophie, who were born premature at 32 weeks. My husband, Daniel, is a long-haul truck driver, and he was scheduled to be out of state the exact week I needed surgery. It wasn't optional. I had a fibroid the size of a grapefruit that was causing internal bleeding, and my doctor said if I waited any longer, I'd need a full hysterectomy. The surgery was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I'd be under anesthesia for 3 hours, and recovery would take at least 2 days in the hospital. I needed someone to watch my twins. My parents lived 20 minutes away. They were both retired. My mom had been a stay-at-home mom for 30 years. My dad had been an engineer. They had time, they had experience. I thought asking them would be the easiest call I'd ever make. I was wrong. The first time I asked, my mother said she'd think about it. That was 3 weeks before the surgery. I called her back 2 days later, and she said, "Claire, your father and I are very busy right now. We have bridge club, and your dad has his woodworking projects. We can't just drop everything." I reminded her that I was having surgery, that I could bleed out if something went wrong, that my husband would be in another state. She said, "Well, maybe you should have thought about that before having twins." I hung up. The second time I asked, I tried a different approach. I offered to pay them $500 for 4 days. My mom laughed. She actually laughed. She said, "Claire, we raised 3 kids. We're done. We're not raising yours too." I told her I wasn't asking her to raise them. I was asking her to watch them while I recovered from surgery. She said, "It's the same thing. You're always asking for help. You always need something. Maybe if you'd married someone more stable, you wouldn't be in this position." That's when I started crying. The third time, I didn't ask. I begged. I drove to their house with the twins in the car. I knocked on the door. My dad answered. I explained the situation again calmly, desperately. I told him I had no one else. That Daniel's family lived in another state. That my friends all worked full-time. That daycare doesn't take 6-month-olds for overnight medical emergencies. My dad looked uncomfortable. He said, "Claire, your mother and I have talked about this. We think you rely on us too much. We think it's time you figure things out on your own." I asked him what that meant. He said, "It means we're not babysitting." I stood there in their doorway, holding Emma in one arm and Sophie's car seat in the other, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These were the same people who used to tell me that family always comes first. The same people who posted pictures of my twins on Facebook with captions about how blessed they were to be grandparents. But when I actually needed them, when my health was on the line, they treated me like I was asking for something unreasonable. 2 days before my surgery, I went to my parents' house one last time. Not to beg, just to tell them the date and time, in case they changed their minds. My grandfather was there. He'd been living with them for the past year after my grandmother passed away. He was 84, still sharp, still kind. He'd always been my favorite person in the family. When I walked in, my mother was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. My dad was in the garage. My grandfather was sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee. I told my mom the surgery was in 2 days. She didn't look up. She said, "I heard you the first 10 times, Claire." I asked her one more time if she'd reconsider. She put her phone down and stared at me. "Claire, I'm going to say this once. Your father and I are not your babysitters. We are not your backup plan. We raised our kids. You need to grow up and handle your own responsibilities. If you can't manage 2 babies and a surgery, maybe you shouldn't have had them." I felt my chest tighten. I looked at my grandfather. He was staring at my mother with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold. Unblinking. I left without saying another word. That night, my grandfather called me. He said, "Come to dinner tomorrow night. Bring the twins. I'll watch them during your surgery." I started crying again, but this time out of relief. I asked him if my parents knew. He said, "They will." I didn't understand what he meant, but I trusted him. My grandfather had always been the one person in my family who showed up. When I graduated college, my parents were on a cruise. My grandfather drove 6 hours to be there. When I got married, my parents complained about the venue and the cost. My grandfather gave me $5,000 and told me to have the wedding I wanted. When the twins were born early and spent 3 weeks in the NICU, my parents visited once. My grandfather came every single day. The next night, I arrived at my parents' house with Emma and Sophie. My grandfather had insisted I come for dinner before the surgery. He said it was important. My parents seemed annoyed that I was there, but they didn't say anything. My mom made pasta. My dad sat at the head of the table. My grandfather sat next to me, holding Sophie in his lap. Halfway through dinner, my grandfather cleared his throat. He said, "I have something I need to say." My dad rolled his eyes. My mom sighed. But my grandfather didn't stop. He pulled out a folder from the chair next to him. A legal folder. He opened it and placed a document on the table. It was his will. My mother's face went white. My grandfather said, "I had my lawyer update this 2 days ago. I want everyone to hear it now." He looked directly at my mother. "I've left the house to Claire. The savings account, $240,000, goes to Claire. The car, the investments, everything goes to Claire." My mother stood up. "Dad, what are you doing?" My grandfather didn't raise his voice. He just kept talking. "I've also added a clause. If anyone contests this will, they get nothing. Not a single dollar. Not a single photograph. Nothing." My dad was frozen. My mom's hands were shaking. But my grandfather wasn't finished. He reached into the folder again and pulled out a second document. This one was a notarized letter. He slid it across the table to my mother. "This is a letter I've written to the family. It details every conversation I've overheard in the past 6 months. Every time you refused to help Claire. Every cruel thing you've said about her. Every time you called her a burden. I've dated them. I've written them down, and I've sent copies to your sisters, your brother, and your bridge club friends." My mother's face turned red. "You can't do that." My grandfather smiled, but it wasn't warm. "I already did. They received them this morning." My dad finally spoke. "Dad, this is ridiculous. We have a right to live our own lives." My grandfather looked at him. "And Claire has a right to expect her parents to show up when she's facing surgery. But you didn't, so now you'll live with the consequences." He turned to me. "I'll be at your house at 6 a.m. Thursday. I'll watch the girls. You focus on getting better." I couldn't speak. I just nodded. My mother tried one more time. "Dad, please, we can talk about this. We can work this out." My grandfather stood up, holding Sophie. "No, we can't. Because you've shown me exactly who you are. And I won't reward cruelty." He walked out. I followed him. As we were leaving, I heard my mother sobbing in the kitchen. My father was yelling at her, saying this was all her fault. But I didn't feel sorry for them. Not even a little bit. My parents called me 17 times that night. I didn't answer. The next morning, my mother showed up at my door. She was crying. She said she didn't mean what she said. That she was stressed. That she'd watched the twins. I told her it was too late. She said, "Claire, please. Your grandfather is being unreasonable. He's old. He's confused. You can't let him do this." I looked at her. "He's not confused. He's the only one who saw clearly." She tried to hug me. I stepped back. "You had dozens of chances to help me. You chose not to. Now you'll live with that choice." She left. My surgery went perfectly. My grandfather stayed with the twins for 4 days. He fed them, changed them, sang to them. When I came home, he had meals prepped in my fridge and the house cleaned. He didn't say much. He just hugged me and said, "You deserved better." 2 weeks later, my mother sent me a letter. She said she wanted to apologize. That she realized she'd been selfish. That she wanted to rebuild our relationship. I didn't respond. My father called once. He said my grandfather was manipulating me, that I was being ungrateful. I told him I'd never ask them for anything again. And I haven't. My grandfather passed away 8 months later. He had a heart attack in his sleep. At his funeral, my mother tried to sit next to me. I didn't let her. The will was executed exactly as he'd written it. I inherited the house, the savings, everything. My parents contested it once. The lawyer sent them a reminder of the clause. They dropped it. I still live in that house. My twins are 3 now. They don't know their grandparents. And I'm okay with that. Because I learned something important from my grandfather: family isn't about obligation. It's about showing up. And when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. My grandfather showed up when no one else would. And I'll make sure my daughters know that story.